Using a mold release can greatly extend the life of your molds, so why not always use one? Well, because there are trade-offs. Mold making and casting is about balancing so many different factors and conditions and processes. You do one thing and it solves a problem, but then it can cause another problem down the line. So you're always weighing all of your options and always looking at the entire process and to see, well, what am I going to do now that's going to bite me in the butt, many, many, many steps later. So you're looking for the most time efficient, material efficient, and effort efficient way to get the job done. I almost never use mold release, or in this case parting agent, for reasons I'm about to go into. I keep this particular one in stock because I use it when casting silicone rubber against silicone rubber, and I don't want the two rubbers to stick together. Whatever resin and rubber systems that you're using, you should check with the manufacturer to see what kind of mold releases they have and the various purposes for them, because there's a lot of different kinds of mold releases, a lot of different formulas and all that out there. So check with your manufacturer. If you're using Silpak or if you're using Smooth On, anybody that you're buying your materials from, check to see what kind of release agents that they have. Parting agents work best on molds with simple cavities like this. Obviously, it's easy to spray this material inside this cavity and hit all the areas of the mold. Contrast that with a mold like this, where you've got legs, you've got ears, you've got details. It's really difficult sometimes to get the mold release evenly on the inside of a part like this. That's one downside. The other downside is that it can pool up in fine areas. That is not a good thing. You want there to be a very light, even mist of release agent inside your molds. So what sometimes you have to do is cut the mold open a lot more to access all parts of the mold. The downside to that is that you now have a long, continuous parting line, much more parting line to clean up. So that's one of those trade-offs. So let's get this one sprayed. I always wear gloves when I do this, because no matter what, you're going to get this stuff on your hands. Light mist. Just a spritz from all angles. Trying to get as best you can. It's not easy in a complex mold to get in to all of the areas. So you just have to kind of shoot it from various angles. Just shooting all around, and that will pretty much mist inside it. This one's much easier because the cavity is so simple. Just a mist like that will do it. So that is pretty well misted. In my studio, I never use mold release, and there are two reasons why. One, I tend to make prototypes, and I only need a couple of castings. I don't need long runs of dozens or hundreds of castings. So I don't really worry that much about mold life. But the main reason that I don't use mold release is that it makes the castings hard to paint. Because what happens is that the mold release that you spray on the mold transfers to the resin, and it comes out of the mold. It definitely has some mold release on it, and that mold release is really hard to paint. In fact, you can't. We did lots of toys for Disney, in this case Lion King. So we sculpted these figurines and cast them in resin, but then we had to paint them. These are called paint masters, and they serve as a guide for the toy company so that they know which colors to use and how and where to apply them. So we have to be able to paint the resin castings. All right, so let's pour these molds that I sprayed, get them filled, slam them in the pressure pot, and see what we get. Want to see what it looks like when you use old resin that's been sitting around and got air all in it? There it is. Look at that stuff foam. This is why those castings are in the pressure pot. Okay, let's yank them from the tank, see what we did. Come on, come on, come on. Let it go, let it go. All right. Looking pretty good. Let's see what we got. All right, looking pretty good. Plastic's still pretty soft. You can just tear it off. Nice, very little flash. Got that one and this one. Okay, let's see if these castings are going to make a liar out of me or if they're going to do what I expect them to do. What we're going to do is going to mix up a little bit of Nova Color gesso. This is a good old LA company, not a sponsor, but I've been buying my paint from Nova Color for about a couple hundred years, feels like. So let's pour some gesso in the cup. Don't need much. And we'll go ahead and mix it. I got water in this cup, wet brush. Let's kind of mix it. I don't want it to be too loose. All right, let's see if it does what I expect it to do. Generally, what happens on these surfaces is that the paint, look at that. Look at that. Look at that, just beat up on there. Let's try it. Even full strength gesso. Look at that. This is exactly what I am talking about. That's pretty dramatic. Oh my God. Obviously you can't paint these. This just simply doesn't work. I mean, it just, the paint just beads off it and it just does not coat. And you can sit there and work it and work it and work it, and you will drive yourself insane with frustration with this. Now you know what the problem is, but what's the solution? The solution is good old acetone or lacquer thinner or naphtha, I think also works, but I always use acetone mostly. And what I do, put on a glove because I know I'm going to get my hands covered in acetone. And I don't really feel like pulling all of the oils out of my skin, poisoning myself, turning my body into a toxic waste dump. Get a nice wet rag of acetone and just wipe the thing off. Let's clean it as best you can. See, this is the step that I want to skip entirely. A shape like this, that's pretty easy to clean. But what happens if you have a shape like this? This piece would benefit greatly from extending the mold life. It's got so much detail and so much surface area that, yeah, you would love to be able to extend the mold life. Plus, this is a production piece. But you put mold release on this piece, you're never going to clean it. You're going to be in there with a brush, scrubbing and cleaning and scrub, and you'll probably never get it 100% off. So you're going to trade mold life for a casting that comes out of the mold almost ready to paint. Most of the time, I don't paint castings with the finished paint colors directly on the resin. I like to use spray primers. Just about any brand works fine. Sandable primer from Painter's Touch, Krylon works fine, Rust-Oleum works fine. This Krylon Fusion paint is supposed to be for plastics, no priming required. So you can use a white Krylon Fusion and on there. And I have found, generally speaking, that acrylic paints, just regular artist acrylic paints, stick well to all these primers. And so I think it's worth doing. Let's see if we got enough of the release agent off of this casting to see if it'll paint. It's still doing it. Look at that. See what I mean? I just don't love letting release agent get anywhere near my castings. I mean, look at that. Let's see, I'm going to really make it thick. It's right out of the cap. That's a little better, but see what happens? See what's happening? See how it's pulling away? And that's like thick acrylic. I never want a gesso that thick a coat on there. I want nice thin coats. And even this is pulling away like crazy. That's no good. And that is why I never let release agents get anywhere near my castings. Hey, if you like this video, watch this video next. If you got value from it, please support my Patreon. I really appreciate everyone who does. Also, there's a super thanks button at the bottom. Thanks for watching. I will see you in the next video. I hope.